research done on average downtime for private networks or for RF mesh or PLC as a comparison point?
I'm not aware of the number since we are not working on those areas.
Okay. This next question comes from Rich. He asks, maybe Joseph, you can take the first swing at this, maybe Brian will want to pitch in, and Matt, welcome your comments as well, but they want to know how many utilities are right now worldwide using cellular for the meters themselves, not just for backhaul, because of course there's many utilities using cellular for backhaul, and why aren't there more?
I think the utilities are just now starting to pick up cellular as one of the potential technologies. And one of the reasons there has not been more is that the pricing has just started to go down. So
okay.
it used to be not a very good business case, but now it is starting to look very good.
All right, good. Now,
yep.
most meters do have some data storage, as I understand it. That would help. Brian, did you have more to add there?
Yeah, I did. So it's an interesting question because, as I mentioned in the opening, most carriers, including Sprint, we've had C&I meters, commercial industrial meters, out in the field for some time. I mean, there are some out there that are 8 to 10 years old that were attached to buildings or businesses billing $100,000 a month in power charges, but yet the cellular connection might have been maybe $5 or $10. In a residential situation, over the last 8 to 10 years, that's changed significantly. The cost of the cellular modem has dropped, so now you're talking about cellular modem costs that could be in the $20 range, and the monthly recurring is far less than what a C&I meter would bill at. So the numbers, both the numbers are there as well as the technology in terms of cost reduction. And again, going back to Moore's law, it's directly benefiting the smart meter segment. So that's why Matt's organization is probably the most I would say forward-thinking and vocal utility out there, but you will see other utilities begin to adopt this methodology due to these items, costs and hardware costs.
Joseph, I'll turn to you, and then anyone else who wants to jump in. We had a number of questions about cellular in other countries, particularly those where there's a lot more homes per transformer typically. Chris asked about Europe. Praveen wanted to know about India, where it's mostly 2G today. It's not 3G, it's just mostly in cities. Roberto had a particular interest in Brazil and LA. Can you summarize for us, how relevant is cellular elsewhere in the world?
Definitely 2G will be relevant today, particularly for locations that they have 2G only today. But 3G will be the technologies that can support most of the requirements, for example, capacity, latency, etc. So I think it is one of the ways to evolve to 3G when it is available and when that type of requirement is needed.
Brian, Sprint is a global company. Are you talking to utilities in other parts of the world?
Primarily, we're focusing stateside on smart grid initiatives. There are some other North American opportunities, but primarily it's stateside.
Brian, while you're talking, would you kind of explain, or maybe Joseph had like to chip in here too, explain the upgrade timeline for 4G and LTE? When are they most likely to really show up at the level required to have them be considered for a smart grid rollout? Where will that happen first?
Well, I would address that in two parts. There are other carriers that have been very aggressive with their LTE deployments and have been building out their LTE networks across the U.S. From a Sprint perspective, we have deployments ongoing into 2013 and 2014. You'll see some of our first markets launched this year. I think, though, we need to take a step back, though. If we talk in terms of what Joseph presented, data tonnages and data payloads, as well as the cost, 3G is more than enough for AMI smart metering applications. Additionally, you have costs, chipset costs. So you're going to need to, if you're thinking about building LTE into a smart meter, that's going to have a direct bill of materials impact on a very margin-constrained business. That you probably won't see LTE in meters for quite some time until those costs come down. And then lastly, you've got the failover or the redundancy effects. Those chipsets need to be able to be backward compatible to existing 3G and 2G networks, as well as broadcast and SMS as a last gasp in the case of some of these unplanned events we had talked about.
I've got time for one more question here, and I'm going to start with Matt. Well, actually, one quick one, Matt, and then the actual question itself. And the quick one is, are you sharing any of your reports or your testing with other utilities?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Everything that we've done for testing is under strict NDA, and I'm unable to do that.
Sorry to hear that. Matt, Wendy, and Michelle, and Robert, and have all asked variations of the question about, using cellular together with other communications technology. You yourself mentioned in passing, the importance of a layered architecture. Will you say more about that? What are the layers, and when and how might they work together?
Sure. In my ideal state of an architecture, it doesn't matter if you're using Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, one of the mesh network providers. If it's a standardized communication protocol for the physical and medium access control layers, and you run an IP internet protocol on top of that, really you can interchange that pretty easily. And when you get past that, when your application protocols get more and more standardized, I see a future where you could have a hybrid of multiple network communications technologies out there, similar to how do you access the internet today. You could go to the coffee shop and use Wi-Fi from a provider, and then go back to your office, plug into your Ethernet, and meanwhile your internet browser doesn't care.
Right.
That's the type of layered architecture I'm shooting for.
Great, terrific. Joseph, are you seeing this kind of layered architecture, at least as a goal amongst utilities, and is it a feasible goal?
Yes, I think this is a feasible goal, and I'm seeing that happening.
Terrific. Well, listen, I want to close with this comment we just got from Marvin. He says, this is one of the most informative webinars I've ever heard. You guys really concluded something. And I want to say thank you to Joseph from Qualcomm, to Brian from Sprint Nextel, to Matt from Consumers Energy, and to say thank you to you as well for joining us today. Please watch SmartGrid News for the announcement of our next Lessons from the Real World webinar, and I hope to see you back here then.